Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our global Nimble community. My name is John Farrar, the CEO of Nimble, and I can't be more excited about this presentation today with these two people, Alice Hyman and Diana Guerin. They have been friends and inspirations to me for a long time. In fact, Alice's dad inspired me to build Goldmine with his book called Strategic Selling, and Diana has been a Goldmine user and I think even a reseller back in the day. Is that right, Deanna?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yep. And so what we're here today is to talk about one of the most important things that you can do to generate leads, trade shows. And Diana and Alice have launched a company called Trade Show Makeovers, which mission is to make sure companies like yours stop leaving money on the trade show floor. What they're going to do is give ideas about what to do before a trade show to make sure that you're wildly successful. So with that, Deanna and Alice, take it from here.
Yeah, well, thank you, John. I really appreciate that lead in, and I don't think I knew that about you starting your company based on Alice's dad's book. So it's really a pleasure to be here with Alice. Yeah, and I think that Michaela has a poll for us to get started with.
Which one of these seems to be the biggest for you? Deciding which shows to exhibit at. If you haven't exhibited yet, that may be really something you want to concentrate and focus on. Getting sales people trained to qualify the leads during the show. I think sometimes people forget that what salespeople do at a show is different than what they do on the phone, different than what they do face-to-face when they're with a customer. It's a different kind of selling, a different kind of work. Setting up appointments before the show, knowing what kind of booth we need, or getting qualified leads at the show. Yeah, so these are big challenges. It looks like getting qualified leads at the show is the clear winner there, John and Diana. What do you think?
Well, I think that's really justifying the show, right? Is getting qualified leads and coming back and closing measurable business from it. And I think a lot of that starts with the prep. What do you guys think?
Oh, absolutely starts with the prep. And I know that we're trying to measure a lot of different things when we do trade shows, and we definitely are there for reasons of building our brands. But as Diana and I always like to say, brand awareness does not keep the lights on. Good that they know you're there, but we definitely want to get it beyond just knowing that you're there. We want them to have interest, and we want them to let us determine their needs and see if we can open a sales opportunity. So Diana, are we going to put our videos on, or are we going to just keep the slide deck?
But we're just gonna walk through the 3 keys to success before the show. So that
okay, so we're not putting our video on. We're just gonna
use the power. Video on, no.
Okay. All right. So there are 3 keys to success. Of course, there's many things that you have to do, but we are going to share 3 with you that you can do immediately. One of the things that we want to mention is that long before you ever participate in any show, it is really important that you understand how this method of lead generation fits into your larger sales and marketing plan, because you have many ways that you generate leads. Trade shows and events is one of those ways, and it needs to fit really well into the bigger picture, and you truly need a strategy for that. And so that's something that you need to do. We're not going to spend a lot of time on that, but we'd like you all to think about the shows and events that you do, the sponsorships, and how they fit into your larger sales and marketing strategy. And then once you've figured that out and you've chosen the shows that you want to go to, you definitely need to set some goals.
So Alice, I have our trade show calculator that I'd like to share for the goal setting, because this really gives you a visual experience of, you know, what is it that you can do, especially if you're picking shows or you know, ready to evaluate the shows that you have been at to determine, are these the right shows for our strategy? And this has been a real eye-opener for some of our clients. One of our clients had 45% of their marketing budget was allocated to attending trade shows. And when they went through the calculator with us, they found out that they were only generating 5% of their revenue and profitability from 45% of their marketing budget. So they knew that the answer was not to stop going to shows, but they knew the answer was to get better. So when you start to put all of the work that you're doing from a trade show perspective into a calculator like the one that we've developed, and we're going to share this at the end of the session of how you can get this for yourself for free to use on your own shows. But when you put everything into perspective, you can start to see, you know, what are the things that we could be doing better, or maybe you'll even have some aha moments about what are the kinds of activities that we should be doing at trade shows. So I'm just going to do a very quick walkthrough the ROI calculator and then turn it back to Alice for the other two success strategies. But do download this at the end of the session. So the way this works is you'll put your average deal size into the calculator and then create examples of, you know, some of the shows that you may have attended. Now, this is only an example. This is a hypothetical scenario. So SaaStr isn't necessarily a better show than AAISP, but this is how you would build your own strategy. So this is the example on the top, and then we've created the calculator here for you to add your average deal size, and then just add into each of the different fields, and they'll populate on the calculations themselves, and you'll be able to see, you know, what kind of spend should we make, how many qualified leads should we be getting from our show, what's our cost per qualified lead, and you can compare this against your other marketing activities, and then how many deals does that turn into. You can start to get a sense of your conversion rates at each of the shows. The gross margin is, we put a note in here, this is something you can get from your financial team. This is just purely revenue minus your cost of goods sold. So if those are the words you want to use with your finance team, just cost of goods sold. This is not your profit margin. So, but that's a real aha moment, because if you're selling a lot of goods, but you're not overcoming your margin, then you're not getting a good return on investment. So I'm going to stop sharing this. I'm happy to.
Hang on one second, Diana. I think it's just important in your cost. It's not just the cost of the space that you know, the sponsorship was $20,000 or the sponsorship was $45,000. You had to fly people there. You had to feed them. You might have had an event in conjunction with, you gave things away. You know, there are many costs affiliated with a show, and you really have to decide and be consistent about that, because if you, in one of the costs, you only put the sponsorship cost and you didn't put all of the travel expenses and all of the other many expenses that go along with the show, maybe you had to build a new booth, you don't want to attribute that just to one show, but you may have some cost against that show specifically. You've got to get that all in there, and you've got to be consistent about the way you calculate the costs. Otherwise, this is not apples to apples. So make a list of what you include in your costs and do it the same for every show and put it into the calculator. And then the cost attributed to marketing is going to vary by company. Sometimes you're going to, you know, say that, well, we really are there because all our competitors are there, and even if we don't get a lot of deals, we have to be there. This is a much more of a marketing expense. And then some of your other shows, it is a really much better place to get good leads, and it's not as much of a marketing show. It's more sales related, and you're going to put a different, attribute a different amount to marketing. But you need to, again, be consistent about that, because those numbers change the outcome. So be careful when you decide how much you're attributing to marketing for each show. You may want to attribute the same percent to marketing for every show. So, you know, just keep that in mind as we think through this.
Great, fantastic. I'm going to go back to our slides.
And again, we're going to share the link with you afterwards. And then if you want somebody to help you quickly walk through that, we'd be happy to jump on a call and do that with you. So knowing that you're going to go to these shows, and if you've done them in the past and knowing how you've done in the past, you're going to set some goals. So you're going to say, for this show, we have a goal to meet a certain amount of people. We have a goal to get a certain amount of qualified leads. We have goals to set a certain amount of appointments per rep. We have a goal to do our follow-up in a certain amount of time, to get a percentage response from our follow-up. We have a goal to open a certain amount of sales opportunities as a result of this show. So you will set several goals around every show, and you want to do that again well in advance so that you can remind everyone at the show what the goals are, and you can be gathering the data that you're going to need to see if you can hit your goals. And then of course you're going to measure after the show as well. Now remember, some of our sales cycles are 3, 6, 9 months or longer. So you may open some sales opportunities and you can measure that, but you may not be able to measure how many closed opportunities you got because of that show until many months later. So this tracking has to continue on. So set some goals and measure those, and remember that not all of them are immediate goals, so that you will have to check 3, 6, 9 months later to see if you hit some of those goals. Anything else you want to say about goal setting, Diana?
Nope, that's great. Nope, that's perfect. Especially for people who haven't exhibited at a show yet. I think that's one of the things that's important to drive home. So
yeah, and most of what you do to be successful happens well before you ever show up on the property and set up your booth. And I think that's where most people really get themselves into trouble. They just don't do enough on the front end. They don't do enough preparation. They don't do enough research. They don't get their messaging organized. And so that's the next thing that we want to talk about, is memorable messaging. And that is the messaging that you're going to use has to match the messaging that your company uses all the time. It may be that you take one piece of the messaging out because you're going to highlight a specific product or service at that show, but this messaging has to be your messaging that's consistent, and you bring it through to the show. So for example, if you have built a booth and it has completely different messaging than what's on your website, it will be really difficult for the people to come by to see who you are later on. They'll see your booth and then they'll go to your website and they'll say, is this the same company? So we have to make the messaging memorable visually. And let's say we're going to send out some emails ahead of time. So we use the same visuals and the same language on that messaging we send ahead of time. And again, it should match our website and our social media. So if people go to our website or click any of our social media links, they see that the same visuals, the same words, and they say, oh, I see this company. I'm getting to know them. I see that it's the same, and they can start to know you well, right? So that messaging, the words that your salespeople use to describe your products and services and to say what you do quickly has to be memorable, and it has to match all these other messages that are getting sent. And you want to prepare all of this in advance so that when the salespeople get to the show, or the people who are working the booth, it might not just be salespeople, it might be senior executives, it might be marketing people, it might be your customer success people, all the different people you involve in the show, all have been trained on this messaging. So they know what the goals are, and they know what the messaging is, and it all matches, and it's all memorable, and they're ready to have great conversations rather than pitch or demo, so that they're memorable themselves and people want to continue those conversations after the show. But you can't do that at the show if you haven't prepared in advance. So that messaging is critical. Get the messaging down, get it ready, and that same messaging has to continue after the show. So before, right? You will have to create everything before so that you can dominate at the show, and then you can generate revenue afterwards. And that's our proprietary process: create, dominate, and generate. So we want you to have this memorable messaging that goes before, during, after the show, and everybody's trained on it and able to use it. And the people who meet you can remember you visually, and they can remember the words, and they know what you do, so that it's easy for them to buy from you.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that we see, Alice, most often, and it's the hardest about memorable messaging, is your messaging has to be about your ideal audience. So if you'll notice, the image that you see with Trade Show Makeover all the time is this image of somebody hemorrhaging money out of a trade show swag bag. And that's why clients hire us, is because that's their biggest fear. So unless they feel like this is their experience, then we're not going to be relevant to them. So we don't even you'll notice that we don't even talk about Alice and Diana first. You'll always see this memorable message of, are you leaving money on the trade show floor? And that's what you're going to want to do with your own company, is don't use lingo, don't use your own company lingo. Use the language of your client to attract them and become memorable with the pain point that they're dealing with, and then continue that conversation. They'll be interested in learning more about you if you can demonstrate to them that you understand what they're dealing with.
Yeah, speak their language. Let them know that you know them.
Yep. And then the third is, when you get all of your goals set and your memorable messaging, then Alice is the queen of talking about how to train so that you can actually execute on those goals.
Well, I think it's interesting because we forget that people need to be trained. Somehow we think that they just know how to do things. And it's the same with trade shows. And especially for some of us who have been going to trade shows for many, many years. We have done it for so long, and we've done it a certain way, and we've gotten the results that we've gotten, and we just keep going to the shows because we're afraid not to go, and that's the way it goes. Well, we need to stop that cycle, and we need to do better planning and goal setting and getting everything ready. And then we need to make sure that all of the people involved in the success of these trade shows and events is trained to do what they need to do. Even simple things like training them on what to wear, training them on taking breaks. So what you do when you're at the booth, I'm going to train you on that. I'm going to train you how to have conversations using all the things we've prepared. I'm going to train you on how to set an appointment before they leave the booth. I'm going to train you on how to capture their information. I'm going to train you on what you should wear so that you look very professional, or in some cases, we want to really dress up because that's the audience. In other cases, we want to wear our t-shirts that have our logos on them, and sneakers, fancy sneakers that match, things like that. But we want to make sure that everybody knows, so they're not embarrassed, we're not embarrassed, and they can focus their attention on the people coming towards the booth. So that training makes everybody more confident. It makes things run more smoothly. It makes sure everybody's on the same page. So before we show up at the show to set up that booth, we have got to train everybody on all of the things that they need to do to be successful. And that means that they can feel confident, and so they're ready to smile and talk with people and have engaging conversations that those people will want to continue with them after the show. And that's how we really get qualified leads that turn into deals, when we have great conversations that people want to continue. So the only way to have success with that is to train everyone on that. So I know we need to move along here, and these are just 3 of the things that you can do before trade shows in order to make sure that they are highly successful. Diane, do you want to add anything before we flip it to John? Because John has some amazing examples of what he's done to be wildly successful.
He really does. Just to kind of wrap it all up in a bow, the two biggest challenges, the audiences that we saw were people that are not going to shows yet, or exhibiting at about 5 shows. All of these pieces will lead to getting those qualified leads. When you set the goals to meet the right people, you have the messaging that appeals to the right people, and you train your people how to appropriately qualify leads in the booth, then all of those things lead to the show success. But John has some really neat things to share about how to ensure your success before you go to the show. So John, I'm going to turn the show over to you.
Awesome. Deanna and Alice, thank you so much for that amazing presentation. I think that being prepared from the beginning is critical to your team success. And what I'd like to talk to you is two examples of how we did trade shows in the Goldmine days and how we do them in the Nimble days, because I think that they're slightly different and there's different tools that you could use, but there's a lot of similarities. And a lot of it has to do with hustle, because I think that what breaks my heart is when I walk down a main street and I see people sitting in a retail store behind the counter on their phone and expecting people to walk in. People won't walk in. You've got to drive them in, and you got to get out in the aisles and bring them in. And that is one of the ways that we hustled at Goldmine. So let's start with how we started. We started with regional trade shows. We used to go to these things called LANDA shows, local area network dealer association shows. And people actually wore suits back in those days. And Goldmine wasn't even called Goldmine, it was called Sales Pro. And I would spend the nights assembling boxes and shrink wrapping software. And then during the day, get out there and hustle. And that eventually led to us at Comdex, which you probably never heard of Comdex, but Comdex was the computer show in the world. And we started with a little 10 by 10 booth with the skyline thing with the airbrush sign. And we eventually grew to a booth that occupied like 300 by 200 on the main floor next to the main exhibitors. And I'm going to tell you how we did it. And one of the key things that you notice here is signage. There is a big, massive sign over our booth. And signage is so important for people to be able to see you, but not just the signage on top of your booth, but throughout your booth. There's a consistent story that you're not only telling with your signage, but also that you're teaching your team on having a unified brand story promise that you then deliver. But more than that, notice that in the front of the booth, there's the greeting area, but then there's these demo stations on the side, but in the back is a stage where you could tell a story at scale. But ultimately, you're not going to get people into that stage, into that storytelling place without getting out in the aisle and hustling. And this is what we taught at Goldmine. We wore branded shirts. We had prepared a show special, and we got out there and we brought people into the booth to start conversations. And ultimately, that was our seeding mechanism, because if you think about it, anybody who goes to a trade show is typically an influencer to the people that don't go. And if you can see them and turn them into users and storytellers, that's how you build a tribe. And then what you want to do is you want to make sure that you drive them into that booth to do that storytelling. And one of the techniques that we use to get a more massive presence is we build demo stations for our third-party products. So we had over 300 third-party add-ons and about 5,000 partners, and we had stands for them that they could come and demonstrate their products, which enabled us to have a much bigger presence as well as more storytellers within our platform. And that's how we built our tribe of evangelists, and that's how we ended up with this office overlooking the Pacific Ocean, where we occupied most of that building that you see there. And it was amazing. So let's talk about how we do it today. So I think one of the key things that we do differently is we prepare a lot more at Nimble in regards to the outreach that happens because of the new means of being able to do that digitally. And I'm going to talk about a story about how we prepared for Microsoft Inspire 2018 and what the results were. And so one of the key things that we did is we wanted to identify the prospective people and companies that we would want to engage with. And there's a lot of ways that you could source that information. One of the key ways is most trade shows have an app that you could use to go in and identify prospective people. There's also websites and lists that you could use, things like Twitter lists, as well as websites that list the top people or partners of those places. Also, LinkedIn is a great place to go and search for people. And ultimately, when you identify these people, what you want to do is you want to basically build records for those people and the companies that contain information that enables you to segment and then outreach to them. And I'm going to talk about how we did all that. So once we identify these people, then we build small segmented groups of them. Now notice that this Twitter list over here is 3,500 people. Nimble imported that Twitter list, enriched them with people and company data, and then we segmented, including their email, we segmented them based off of their area of interest, and we sent small subset emails to the people. This was one of the segments that we sent. Notice that there are 200 people. We got a 50% open rate. Now, I don't know if you know anything about marketing open rates, but that's an outrageous open rate. And then look at the meetings that we scheduled beforehand. This is our calendar for the show. This was all booked before we ever set foot at the event. And all of that resulted in us having an incredible show. This is just a simple measurement of that. This is their leaderboard that Microsoft's social team tracked of the people who are the top influencers of the show. Everybody on that leaderboard is a Microsoft executive, except for yours truly. And I'm only there because of the grace of my team, because it takes a team to make this happen, and they work their butts off to make all this work. So let's get in and talk about how we did that. One of the things I want to point out is that trade shows aren't just about the booth. You need to get out and network and hustle. And I know it's hard. I know it's hard after being a booth all day to go out there and mix and hustle, but also before the show, not just engaging prospects and customers, but ideally even the vendor themselves who might be running the show. So if you're doing a show with SAP or Microsoft or Salesforce, whoever, is engage with them. Notice that this speaker, this Microsoft speaker, is wearing a Nimble badge on their badge. And then the other thing is that you got to drive press before and after the event. And I'm going to talk about how we did that, all of which resulted in some incredible results, including signing Microsoft as a reseller and them globally reselling Nimble through their distributors. So as a result of this show, Microsoft signed up as a reseller of Nimble. They're reselling Nimble with Office 365 globally. They are not only walking us into the distributors, but they're paying the distributors to walk us into their resellers. We've signed up about 30 of the top 50 distributors, and we have over 1,000 Microsoft partners in our channel. So how did we turn Microsoft Inspire into a gold mine? Let me show you my desktop, and I'll walk you through some of the tools and techniques. So as I said, what we did is we used a variety of means to build these segments. So you see all these segments: Inspire, this, that, and the other thing. So these are tags of people from the field sales team, from partners, from resellers, from other ISVs, etc. And basically, we built these different segments, and then we outreach to those different people. How did we build those segments? Like I said, there's apps for the trade show. There's Twitter lists. This is one example. This is all of Microsoft's top 200 partners. And what we did at Nimble is we went and identified the people that we wanted to engage with, and then use Nimble to build the record. So essentially with Nimble will automatically go and build records for people and company, including their emails, and then we outreach to them. So lists are one way, the trade show one is another. Every single trade show has lists, Twitter lists associated with it, and you can import those Twitter lists into Nimble. That's just another means. And then what you want to do is you don't want to just blast everybody, and you have to be personal, one-to-one, relevant, and authentic. And so here's an example of an outreach that I did. This was actually Microsoft WPC 16, which is the old name for Inspire. And you can see how personal that this message is. It's not salesy, and it came from my email to their email. If you send these messages in a marketing automation system, they're going to be ignored. The other thing that we did, and by the way, Nimble does group messaging and templating and outreach, and I won't talk about that, but this is the result of that. Look at these meetings. I mean, I was beat, but it was incredible. It was like swimming at like a Grateful Dead concert. There's just magic happen, not only in these meetings, but in between those meetings. So what did we do to prepare? Well, one of the things we did is we built blog posts and shared them along the signs of the hashtag of the event. And we taught people about how to be nimble at the event itself. We also built lists of the people, the thought leaders that you might want to connect with at Inspire. And those people all shared these posts as well. And then we use social to share a number of different articles, our own articles, other people's articles, making sure we hashtagged it appropriately. And then we use tools to gather the people that were part of the conversation. Every conference had a hashtag. And so before the conference and during the conference, you want to be listening to that hashtag. This is a tool called Get Littlebird, which will listen to the conference and then build a list of the influencers and the people that are part of that conference. And then we took that list and imported that into Nimble as well. But we also built a Twitter list and shared it with people, because when you put people on Twitter lists, they'll see you. And so all of this pre-show engagement enabled us to stand out like nobody's business, drove people to all the different events that we were a part of, and then resulted in us signing, not only signing the deal with Microsoft, but also press from the event, because ultimately you want to tell stories and get other people to tell those stories. So don't forget about press from events. And so we got press in places like Customer Think, we got press in places like Forbes, and also Microsoft published those things themselves. And so this is just some examples of the way that we prepared for Microsoft Inspire by building segments of people, outreaching in one-to-one ways, driving meetings and conversation, engaging intelligently at the show, and then most importantly, doing all of the key follow-up and follow-through after the event to make it a success. And with that, I want to bring Michaela on. Michaela, we don't hear enough from you. Michaela, I want you to cover anything that you feel I missed, because you were a key part of our team that built this.
Thanks, John. I would just like to iterate that what you do before you go anywhere to any show is what can make or break it. So we spend incredible amounts of hours doing research. And one tip that maybe, because research takes time and everybody is busy, so we actually use our interns to do majority of the research. So if you I would highly recommend getting in touch with colleges in your area and seeing if interns would like to learn from you. So we had incredible interns that help us with a lot of the heavy lifting. So first, our team identified all the places where we can find lists of people. So John was showing the list of Microsoft resellers. So we had our interns using the Nimble browser extension to hovering over the names and building records in Nimble, tagging them appropriately. And then we were using our segmentation to segment the people into groups that actually make sense for an outreach. Because like John mentioned, if you outreach to hundreds and hundreds of people, you will not be able to customize the message very well. So it will be more effective if you segment people into smaller groups, and then you will be able to see much better results, like John showed on his screen with the amazing open rates. And then, sorry, go ahead, John.
No, you go ahead.
And then I wanted to make sure that we also repeat how important is follow-up. We kept following up with people. We kept researching different email addresses if we saw that emails were bouncing, and we just kept outreaching until we scheduled as many appointments as our team could handle. So these were the lists that we used. We used social media to identify people that were already using the hashtag in the streams. And again, building records, tagging them in the Nimble database. We also took advantage of the official conference app. So most conferences will have their apps with everybody who's attending, so you can do a lot of great prospecting on there. And we also use the Microsoft official mobile app to book appointments there, because many conferences, they will only allow you to book appointments at specific meeting areas. So we were communicating, once we got yes from the people that wanted to meet with us, we used the app to set up an official meeting via the official application. And then, of course, our team was using Nimble on their phones during the show, and they were using tasks to send immediate follow-ups to our team that was not at the show to, keep it going. If they promised somebody that they would send them proposals or any information, our team that was back at the office, we were already taking care of that. And then once everybody got back, we had a meeting, little debrief, where they taught us, these are the people we met up with, this is what needs to get done. And then again, we had a team that was taking care of the follow-up.
I think that's perfect, Michaela. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I think that one of the things that I'm not sure if you specifically covered, but I want to cover, is we had all the follow-up already prepared before we ever left for the show, so that we could hit them with that follow-up immediately after the show. And I also want to emphasize the value of those interns, because a lot of the work that we did was detailed. I'm not going to say I don't want to belittle the work, but it's hard, it's tedious. And the great thing is that the intern that we used last summer, we hired as a graduate from Penn State, and that person starts in 2 weeks, because they got the experience, they're already trained, and they demonstrated their value. So that was really a great result. And so, Michaela, thank you so much for participating and sharing. And with that, I do know that we do have some special offers. Allison, Diana, do you want to cover your offers?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, John, thank you. Thank you for sharing your stories. I think storytelling is a really excellent way for us to sort of map our own success onto what others have done.
Just real quick, I think the key here for everybody is that we did all this stuff before we ever got to the show. I know I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. Preparation is key. John and Michaela and their team did all of that stuff long before, right? They got there, they prepared all the follow-up. And that, the things that Diane and I talked about with, the goals and the memorability and the training, that's really where the success comes from. So I just can't say it enough. Prepare, prepare, prepare.
Yeah, exactly. And as I was listening to everything, I can see how many of our clients rely on us, not because these aren't the things that they know to do, but trade shows aren't their only part of their job, and they rely on us to provide the worksheets and the coaching and the training for what to do, when to do, and how to do it, which makes it not overwhelming so that you do execute. So to that end, we would like to offer completely free our trade show calculator that we showed earlier. And then we really are open. Take 30 minutes of time with a certified trade show makeover mentor to go through any of the top challenges that you're dealing with. And that also is completely free. We promise not to pitch, but to be helpful. So those are the offers that we would like to extend, John and Michaela, to this audience.
Okay, and we're doing a free trial of Nimble, and so please, if you're not already a Nimble customer, please go check us out. I really believe that your brand and your network are your net worth, and that most of us don't really do a good job of managing or nurturing our network or our brand. And most of us manually manage our networks in Google Contacts and LinkedIn. And I think that you deserve better, that you should have your own personal CRM, your own personal golden Rolodex, and then bring that to work with you so that if you are using whatever business tools your company forces you to use, that you can automatically build records so that you're more effective at the work that you do, but also that those contacts that you're making, you can put into your pocket because you're going to be hired for your brand and your network at the next company that you go to. So I encourage you to sign up for Nimble yourself if you're an individual, or if you're a company, start using Nimble yourself. Even if you do have an existing CRM, we bidirectionally synchronize with over 180 SaaS business apps. So we can either be your social sales and marketing system or work within your existing social sales and marketing system. So I encourage you to do that. And if you like what you see, use the code JOHN40, JON40, and we'll give you 40% off your first 3 months. And with that, let's get into some Q&A. Diana and Alice, did you guys see any specific questions that you want to cover first? Do you have the document open? If you don't, look in the, go to the link in the panelists, and Michaela will share that with you. In the meantime, I'll go ahead and see if I could pick out some here. One of which is Judy's asking how you use LinkedIn to leverage trade shows for attendees and exhibitors. So a simple example might be, where is my LinkedIn? Let's just open up a tab here. So I might be looking for Microsoft CSPs. And so if I'm looking for Microsoft CSPs, I could do it by searching in LinkedIn for those people. Or what I could do is I can go find groups where those people are in. And then from there, begin to build lists and groups and do outreaches and engage, etc. And Nimble can actually help you to do that easily. One of the beauties of Nimble is that it's intelligent anywheres, and if you wanted to know who Shemania is, you can just highlight her name, and Nimble will build the record or bring the record up automatically for you, so that you could go ahead and engage with her. And if you wanted her email, you just give Nimble first name, last name, company domain name, and Nimble will automatically give you the things that you need to do to engage intelligently.
John, I think it's so important using LinkedIn, and I'm glad that he asked. And one of the things that we recommend, you know, whether you're using LinkedIn alone or LinkedIn Navigator or LinkedIn and Nimble together, is find the right people and interact with them first before you ask to connect. So people get so many connection requests, and this is in conjunction with a show, so you know they're busy getting ready for all of that as well. So bother to read their profile, learn what you can from Nimbling them, get to know a little bit about them, see what they're posting, interact with their posts, and then when you ask them to connect, you have something to say because you've seen some posts you can comment on, or maybe you saw that they went to the same college you did, or something else interesting that you can comment on. When you ask them to connect, you know, you can say, hi, Shamiana, I saw that you're going to Microsoft and so am I, and I saw that you posted this, or I learned this about you on your profile, and I'd love to connect before the show. And then send them that more personalized message, and then as soon as they accept, send them another message that's personal and asking about them, and then, you know, asking, hey, can we meet up at the show? So engage as if you would in person, where you're, you know, just being kind and friendly and learning about each other. Do that same thing on LinkedIn. Most of our clients book many of their pre-show appointments using LinkedIn. It works really, really well if you use it properly.
Perfect.
And if you want to continue on that, I think that LinkedIn is an excellent thing to talk about. But Chuck Royer had asked if there was some examples of memorable messaging. So once we're ready to get to his question, I have something up and ready to share.
Let's do that.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah. Let me just change the presenter to, or maybe you can change the presenter to me.
Sometimes it's words that are memorable, sometimes it's images, and if you have both, it's even better. We've seen some great examples that shows that I think Diana's going to show you here in just a second, but there are things that really draw you in terms of
Diana,
messaging.
you
Here
should
we
have
go.
it now.
Diana.
Yeah, there we go. So I could probably be showing my other screen, but the idea here is, what are they
We
going to
don't see
remember?
your screen.
Oh, you can't
There
see
it
my
is.
screen?
I see it now.
Oh, okay. So Alice, did you want to talk about this? Because you were at this show with Exact
Right. So the great thing about this kind of visual and this kind of simple message is that people get it immediately. I'm stressed, I'm struggling, you can fix it, right? So you don't need a lot of words. And if you use these same images in your before emails and these same images in your after emails, and these same images appear on your website and in your social media, and you're tweeting them during the show and posting them during the show, then that is very, very memorable. This company didn't do this, but we gave them the idea. So we have the stressed woman before the show, the stressed woman at the show. We show you what we can do to get you unstressed, and then perhaps your follow-up could be the before and after of the stressed woman. So the same picture of her, but then right next to it is her being all calm and zen because exact time fixed the problem. So that's what we mean by, coming up with something that is memorable.
So one of the things that a company called Freshworks did is they flew a blimp over the Salesforce Dreamforce that said something that was fun and interesting, and so I think you definitely want to do things that are fun and to help you to stand out. Did you guys see any other questions that you felt was applicable to the audience at large that you wanted to address?
Well, there was one from Tim. Did you address this, John? If you guys can share some best practices for tracking and follow-up strategies specifically for Nimble, like tags or keywords?
Yeah, Tim, I think I covered some of that during my section, and I don't know if I can grab the. Oh, yes, I can grab the presenter right there, and there's me. So as I was sharing before, segmenting your database is so critical to follow up and follow through. And as you know, we basically built these various segments for the different constituency that we were outreaching to at Inspire. And you can see the various different tags that we did with that. And then with those tags, what we did is we built these outreach group messages that we outreach to them. And one of the things that you want to look at in the outreach that you do is not just who opened it, but who didn't open it, and then do something with those people in regards to sort of the next step. And so with Nimble, you can not only go ahead and build these beautiful records from wherever you are, and I'm just going to show you an example of building a record. You could literally build a record from a string. So here I am in an article, and this could be somebody's website, it could be whatever. And if you highlight that name and you basically give Nimble the social identities, because off a string we can't automatically map the identity because it could be anybody. But once you do map the identity, Nimble can then enrich that record. And then again, if you give Nimble the first name, last name, company, domain name, we'll go ahead and give you the contact info, and then give you information that is segmentatable on their areas of influence or interest, which then allows you to build those segments, tag them appropriately, do the outreaches, and then go ahead and do those next steps. So I hope that helps cover some of the specific things about tracking, tagging, keywords, and follow up and follow through. So with that, I'd like to first off thank Diana and Alice for participating in some storytelling about how to be successful at trade shows. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people come back from trade shows with a bag of leads and do nothing with them. And it breaks my heart. Or they go to a trade show and the people in the trade show booths are standing on the carpet behind their tables on their phones. It's such a no-no. You've got to get out there in the crowd. You've got to prepare before. You've got to unify your message. You've got to make sure everybody's on track and engage and qualify and follow up and follow through. And I can't think of anybody better than you both to help people with their trade show makeovers. So make sure you reach out and connect with Allison and Diana about that. And then connect with me on whatever channel that is suitable for you. I'll make it easy for you. My email is jon@nimble.com. Reach out to me. Let me know how we can help you grow. And with that, ladies, you want to say goodbye to our amazing audience?
Thank you so much, John.
You bet.
Yes, thanks. It's been great.
I can't get the answer to that on Apple Watch.
Okay, with a laugh we go. Thank you so much for your precious time. Good luck and good selling.